back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be flipping this mid-century modern tall boy dresser that I got from a friend. And although I love mid-century modern pieces, this one is in kind of rough shape. As you can see, one of the legs have water damage and have been kind of stubbed off, therefore it's very wobbly and that needs to be addressed right away. One of the original pieces of hardware is actually broken, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be able to do, whether I can somehow repair this or I have to change out the hardware. And there's also some scuffs on the top of this dresser that need to be addressed as well. But this piece is solid wood and the wood grain is really pretty, so we should be able to make a pretty cool flip out of it. Let's start first by addressing this stubble leg.
Avery is helping me out in the beginning of this flip here. Right now he's just taking the proper measurements to see how much he needs to cut off to even out the legs while also removing enough to get rid of all of the water damage that's there. Before we get too far into the video, please give this video a thumbs up, which will tell the YouTube algorithm to push it out to new people. This is huge for small channels like mine and I appreciate it so much. Also turn on your post notifications so you never miss a new upload and subscribe if you aren't already. Now that each of the legs have been measured, Avery has taken the circular saw to make the cuts. It is kind of sad that we are making this dresser shorter when it already wasn't very tall to begin with, but with all of the water damage that there was, I think it was the right step. If you were the one flipping this dresser, what would you have done? To finish off the water damage and unevenness of the dresser from that stubble leg, Avery is smoothing out the bottoms of the legs with the circular sander. The circular saw made the edges pretty sharp and we really wanted it to feel like this was the way it was originally built. A few minutes on each leg with a 220 grit really seemed to do the trick. And although it's a little bit shorter and it doesn't look great now, cosmetically it will be fixed and it functions way better.
Now that the leg has been addressed and it's a lot better, the floor is just uneven, so if you see the rocking here, it's even. But we are now going to take off all of the hardware. Because there is some that is broken, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to have to replace it, which is such a bummer, but I definitely will save these pieces that aren't broken so that I can repurpose them and use them on another flip.
Most of the time with this older hardware, I can actually unscrew it with my hands, but I will keep a screwdriver close by just in case.
I think also while I take the hardware off, I'm gonna pull the drawers out and get them out of the garage because I want to sand all of these drawers down to raw wood.
As I'm sure you saw by the title, this video is a part of my one-day flip series, and although I knew I was going to be able to flip it in one day, I did not expect to be able to finish it in the 4 hours that I did. I think this is an absolute record for me. I've never flipped something so fast, and there was a lot of stuff going on in this video, so I definitely did not expect to finish this flip so fast. Now that all the hardware is off, I'm gonna get started on sanding these down to raw wood. The ground is already wet because it's been raining and it kind of looks like it's gonna rain again. I'm not quite sure. There's a few clouds in the sky. The weather app says that it will, so I wanna get these sanded down before that happens. I fully expected to take at least an hour to sand all these drawer fronts down. Typically, that's kind of how it goes when you are trying to sand down to raw wood. But little did I know, the finish was already failing, so it was really easy for it to come off. I don't know exactly why some spots were failing and some weren't. Really, the drawer fronts were failing and the top of the dresser was as well, but otherwise the rest of the finish was good. Obviously these are all really pretty, but look at this one. The wood pattern, wood grain, is so pretty. That looks like waves. It's really cool. I've never seen anything quite like that one before.
Now there's a few things or a few spots that I want to repair on the top here. They are pretty minor, but I want it to stay that way. I'm going to be using this Drydex spackling to kind of fill in any of the gouges that there are on the sides here.
I've gotten pretty lucky with my flips recently where it's been a little while since I've had to use this Drydex to fill in either hardware holes or any gaps or anything. But if I am going to be doing that, this is the product that I prefer to use. I think it's very beginner friendly. It does take a little bit to dry like most products, so while that's drying, I'm going to get started on staining the drawers. I will show you the stain once I stain the top here, but it is a dark walnut that I'm doing. I either love doing a really creamy dark color like this, or I love a very light wood type color. So there's really no in between for me. If I'm going dark, this is what I'm going to use, and if I'm going light, I'm going to most likely do that paint wash that I've been doing a lot recently, where it acts as like a faux wood and you can still see the wood grain and everything. But I was feeling like a dark and moody piece this time around, so I'm going with this really beautiful dark walnut on the drawer fronts, and I am also going to be doing it on the top, which is why I'm now sanding this top down to raw wood as well. Again, I expected this to take a little while, but the finish came right off, which I was super pleased with. And as I had my sander out, I decided to also go ahead and give the whole body a scuff sand because I am going to be painting the body. I rarely do a two-toned look in this way where all the drawers are one color and the body is another, but I'm doing it this time. This is the Varathane premium gel stain that I used on the drawers, and I'm also going to be using on the top. I actually have learned to really love this stain, so if you need a good product for a dark walnut, I would definitely recommend trying this one out. I really only like to use gel stains. I'm not the biggest fan of the oil-based stains, but that's just preference. I will say I'm not worried about the areas where I put the spackling on, since they were so minor. They won't even show up against the stain, and I made sure of that before I decided this is what I was gonna do. For the body of the dresser, I'm using this Pittsburgh Paramount paint in a dark navy blue color because it's a pretty dark color and I already scuff sanded for adhesion. I'm actually skipping the primer. I've used this paint without primer before and it's still keeping up really well. This paint is pretty thick and I probably could have gotten away with only doing one coat of this paint and still having full coverage. I've got this little rule where I do a minimum of 2 coats no matter what, just to make sure that I'm always playing it safe. Now for the hardware, I am going to be using the original top 2 pieces. I decided to spray paint them in gold, and although I will say using these 2 original pieces may be temporary because I am also going to be using these gold knobs. I have 6 and I need 8, but with Memorial Weekend, stores are closed, so later on I'll likely match the hardware. But on another note, the stain was dry and ready for top coat.
So now for top coat, you already know the drill. I'm just going to be using my polyacrylic that I have. This sheen is in the ultra flat. I do use all the sheens. I kind of alternate. So whatever you like, if you like shinier, you can go more of a satin. I like the look of the flat, but I will say the satin is easier to upkeep later down the road as you're cleaning it up, so something to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to be using the grout sponge and a container method for all of the stained portions. It really does just give off a flawless finish, and you're going to see that right now.
Keep in mind that when you do use poly, it'll often make the finish just a little bit darker, but it still looks great. This white sheen that you are seeing is temporary and it will go away as it dries, so don't be worried about that. Another thing is to always do one long continuous stroke to avoid streaks and help that flawless finish. The paint does have a built-in top coat, so I decided against additional poly, which means this dresser is done. Make sure that you did like this video and you are subscribed, and let's get into the final reveal.